Two girls, one ghost.
Two girls, one ghost. And we are your ghostesses. That is Corinne. I am Sabrina.
Hello.
And this is an Encounters episode where we read your stories back to you. Sometimes we lull you to sleep. Sometimes we terrify you. Sometimes you get extra haunted. You never know what you're in for, but it's always a treat.
And we don't know what we're in for either, because we never know what the other person... What? Why are you looking at me like that?
Did you hear my stomach?
That was your stomach?
That was my stomach.
I thought like Leia was doing something in the corner.
No, that was my monster of a stomach.
Whoa.
I hope the mic picked it up. Jamie, if it did, will you
like it
loop it again, play it again, and just like amp it up?
That was loud.
We are the monsters that haunt our podcasts. Sometimes it's just our bodily functions, our IBS acting up.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes the paranormal is still very scary. So as promised, please enjoy this clip from one of the live streams I recently did. And make sure to look out for future live streams on our YouTube. I'll post them on our social media as well. And let me know what you think. Bye-bye.
Would you like to begin?
Fuck yeah, I do.
Love the enthusiasm.
This is from, let's see. This is Trinity, and it's called The Time a Spirit Followed Me for a Couple Weeks After We Exorcised It from Our House.
Wow. Okay. Not what you would expect after exorcising a spirit from your house.
No.
Or hope for.
Hey, girls. This is your girl Trinity from Montana. Your podcast is so scary I can only listen to it every once in a while, but I do love it. These are just some small incidents that were super creepy that happened to me, and I hope you find it creepy. My story is about my haunting at my new house. I bought my dad's old trailer house from him to save money on college housing. I've lived there for 5 years prior to buying the house, so I was used to it. I lived in the add-on room, which used to be the laundry room, but my dad turned it into a room for me. Sometimes late at night, I would hear 2 short knocks on my outside wall that faced the road, so I just assumed it was someone walking by who thought it would be funny. Sound effects. But one night, I was in my bed about to fall asleep when I heard the 2 sharp knocks. This time, it was followed by a presence standing above me, and it whispered in my ear, "Hey!" So I jolted awake, and the presence left. So me, being a sleep gremlin, immediately went back to sleep. Nothing happened until I moved into the house with my best friend and another chick who is now not living there anymore. We had some drinks and had gotten sort of drunk, so around 11 p.m., I went to bed. I laid in my bed for a bit and suddenly felt like someone was watching me. So I looked to the end of my bed, and there was a dark figure standing. Again, I ignored it and tried to go to sleep. My boyfriend came in maybe a half an hour later to check on me because he's sweet, and he too saw the figure standing there. So he came to bed, I guess to protect me. That's what he said. A couple weeks later, a new roommate moved in and she was sleeping on the couch, and she heard her name whispered in her ear and felt a male presence standing in the kitchen slowly walk over to her and then lie on the couch. And then she fell asleep as well.
What the hell?
Finally, we decided to cleanse the house, and so we got some sage and began to burn it. We walked through the house saying stuff like, "You've been nice, but we need you to leave, please." And then when we got to my room, I was standing next to my bed, and my roomie was in the hallway. And as I said to the ghost, "Please go away," I turned to her, and I said, "It feels like a male presence, doesn't it?" Her face went pale, and her mouth hung open in terror. Apparently, behind me, a face pushed through the smoke from the sage.
Oh.
She said its eyes were red and it appeared mad. Immediately, I was terrified. I had a chill at my back for the rest of the day. I work at a bakery from 11 to 3 a.m. every night, so I drive home in the middle of the night, and I kept feeling like someone was with me when my boss would go upstairs and take a break. A couple days after the cleansing, I was downstairs by myself frosting donuts at the bakery when I felt someone push my hair behind my ear. And in the reflection, I saw a screaming skull form. It took up the whole door, then changed into the face of a girl who looked a lot like me, screaming into terror, and then morphed again into another skull that looked like those cartoon ones that always waft up from the bottle of poison. This all happened in the span of like 7 seconds. I got really scared, but still had a lot of work to do, so I kept working. I told my roommate, and when I got home, I finally felt safe. Another couple days passed, and I'm driving home from work again. It's about 2:30 a.m., and I'm driving down a secluded road with no streetlights, and I can't see into my backseat. I look into the rearview mirror for a second, and I see a figure sitting behind my seat. It was gross. It had pointy ears like the goblins from Harry Potter and sharp teeth. It was a man. He had a skeleton and had a long nose. This man was smiling this awfully toothy grin. So I began to chant, Lord God Almighty, protect me and compel the spirit to leave me alone. I chanted it all the way home, and it hasn't bugged me since. It's been a couple weeks, and I don't get freaked out when I'm alone downstairs anymore, but it was such a weird thing to happen. Thanks again, girls. Your podcast is super cool. Trinity.
Trinity. I'm super confused by this because the fact that it like tucked her hair and that after seeing this spirit or entity, the other two people just like went to bed after. It's so confusing because it's like it's depicting itself as this scary monster creature, but then it's doing things that are both startling because you're not expecting it, but also isn't like, it's not like scratching them or being like.
But is that how it starts? Like, is it trying to befriend them and seem benign and kind of like just lurking? It's just lurking there.
Yeah.
I mean, they're all so scared that they're falling asleep, or they're so startled by it that they're sleeping.
That's true. Like your body's just shutting down.
And then the second they try to get rid of it, it's appearing terrifying like mad.
Yeah, no, it's definitely not to be trusted, especially the fact that it kind of shifted from this skull-like figure into someone who looks like Trinity.
And it's also like this possessive, like the pushing, like, yes, that could be romantic, the pushing your hair behind your ear, but it also could be very like, you're mine, I own you.
It is confusing because, yeah, it partially feels a little bit nurturing, but then at the same time, it's like, it could also be a control thing. You're right.
Yeah.
Well, Trinity, thank goodness it's not happening anymore. And that it just was within a few weeks span, but my God.
Right. That was also sent to us in 2019, so we're going to have to ask for an update.
Hopefully Trinity's still good. Hopefully it wasn't like one day without hauntings and Trinity's like, it's gone.
Hope so.
Okay. Mine have a little bit of a theme. There's animals in them. This is called Cursed Alpaca Farm. I decided to finally share this because catching up on the last 6 months of episodes, I heard y'all mention alpacas and schoolhouses back to back.
When was that?
I don't know. I took that as a sign that I'd finally be able to write this out without something happening to me, so fingers crossed. Please bear with me. I have ADHD and this will probably be chaotic and definitely not in chronological order. I had planned to share a diary log with y'all from when my family had lived on the alpaca ranch, but when I checked the USB it was saved to, the thing had been completely wiped, including pictures of our 60+ alpacas.
Oh, sad. I wanted pictures.
So sad. This all started in 2011 to 2012-ish. I was about 14, I believe. I'd been struggling with abuse from my stepmother, and I was doing anything to get my father's attention, as he never really listened to me when I tried to tell him about the things that she was doing to me.
I'm sorry.
I know. It went as far as getting involved with the wrong crowd and getting suspended from school for an entire semester. After this, they made me live with my mom and my stepdad while I finished school from home. During that time, my mom, stepdad, and my amazing sister, we moved into this alpaca farm that was owned by another woman who needed someone to take care of the land and animals, as she lived in another state and she didn't want to lose the farm. I decided that the next school year I would do some online schooling and I would stay home to help at the farm, as I was struggling a lot with suicidal thoughts, and the thought of the farm and being outside with the cloudy fluffs would do me some good.
Yeah. Alpaca healing.
I know. It
Little
is
alpaca
healing.
therapy animals.
The moment we stepped onto the property, my gut instinct was go home. With every fiber of my body, it was telling me to go back and live with my dad. I was a goner the second I found out that there would be a horse, though, because fuck my instincts. I had only been begging for a horse my entire life. This property had around 280 to 300 acres, a lot of wooded land, but also a lot of open pastures. When you pull into the driveway, you're facing a big hay barn, an empty pasture to the right, and the female alpaca's pasture to the left. The house is a bit past the female pasture and a bit back, and the back of the house and the back door is what you see first when you're pulling up. We'll come back to the house layout at some point, as it is kind of important.
Okay.
Going to the left side of the house is this huge barn for the females and storage, feeding, etc. Behind, this will lead to the side pastures for the mamas and the babies, and then the young males, as they can't be put with the adult males too young. The backyard has this old, eerie barn connected to the male pasture we used for the FIFO, first in, first out hay. The rest is all open wooded areas with this old orchard. Coming back to add, in the far front left corner of the property is an old schoolhouse from the early 1900s. I believe this schoolhouse was there before Oklahoma became a state, but I could be wrong about this fact.
It sounds beautiful and historic and...
I know.
Wow.
So cool. I love this area of the state because you can find all of these old schoolhouses all over the place, and they are not allowed to be touched. I've been sensitive to stuff my entire life, and so is my mom, and we both agree that this is the scariest, most active house that we've ever been in.
Oh, scariest? Oh, no.
I mentioned the back of the house was the first thing you see, and that would be an add-on to the house, which opened into the mudroom leading to the bedroom, as well as the entrance to the actual house. We often use this door as the front door since it was the closest to the driveway as well as the main barn. It's the closest to the entrance to the property, but furthest from anyone else in the house. You had to walk through the front room, then the kitchen, and down a long hall to get to any of the other rooms. So this also meant running in the dark past the open windows to get help if I needed.
Oh no.
Often I chose to just hide under the covers instead. Some of my first experiences here would be hearing the barn door open at night, hearing buckets dragged on the ground, barn lights being left on, but off when you would leave the house to go shut the lights off. And it was always darker on these nights. No stars in the sky. The air would be thick with dust, not fog, dust. And we had this old wooden light post in the front of the property that would flicker. One night, I heard a scraping sound on the ground. The scraping sounds were like rakes scraping poop into a dustpan or bucket, and the bucket dragging in the dirt. This was part of our daily morning chores. And this would happen in the front pasture. So I would ignore it for a while, but finally it started to make me mad. Why would they be outside cleaning up shit in the pitch dark?
Right.
I threw the blanket off of me and I turned around, and in my doorway floated this woman who was glowing blue from the light shining into the window.
Oh my gosh.
At first I thought that it was my sister as she tended to sleepwalk, but when I went to go stand and guide her back to her room, I froze. I could see through her and out the front door. The second I realized this, the woman was gone. I sat there frozen for the rest of the night.
This reminds me of the Nope house. I know that's more aliens, but
yeah.
I feel like
but with
there's
the horse training farm and
aliens
stuff.
interacting with the horses at night. Yeah.
Yeah. My stepdad and sister have some German ancestors. I believe it was my stepdad's grandmother or great-grandmother that was first born in America and still spoke some German, but no one else did, especially not my sister, Anna. My stepdad knew a few curses. While living here, both of them would often sleepwalk and speak in German in their sleep, and of course never remembered doing so. My stepdad, let's call him Fergus, and all of these names are changed, by the way, would usually just sit up and start talking in bed. And my sister Anna, on the other hand, would walk all the way across the house, stand over me, eyes turned black instead of her beautiful blue eyes, and she would just mumble in German.
I hate this. Oh my gosh. This is not what I expected from Haunted Alpaca Farm.
No. If you tried to speak to her, she would just stop and turn around and go back to bed, or she would get in your face and stare at you for a really long time.
No.
One time she'd zoomed to me and in English said, "She's speaking," and then continued on in German. When she was done, I saw her eyes roll back to white and then back to her normal blue eyes, usually meaning she's awake.
AKA she was possessed the whole time before.
Yes. I asked her if she was awake, and she was, but she didn't know how she got there. So we talked for a while, and then I took her back to her room after about an hour, and she has no recollection of any of this the next morning. We spent a lot of time in our front barn, especially my mom and I, as we were the ones who were home during the week doing the daily chores after my sister Anna left for school. There were times that we would be listening to the stereo, and all of a sudden the knob would turn and you would see channel skipping. It always played the song Daddy's Hands. Never heard that. I got so sick of this happening that I began listening to an old MP3 player that didn't have this song downloaded to it. It still played though. Either through my MP3 or the radio would kick itself on and begin to play that song.
It would play on the MP3. Ew, what a weird song to play too. I don't know it, but I just don't like the title of it.
Sounds creepy. Another night, alone in my room, I started to hear the song kick on in the barn, and looking out my window, I noticed the barn door was ajar and the main lights were on. This wasn't the first time that this had happened, and Anna and I were often the ones being blamed for it. Since I didn't want to get in trouble again, I decided I would just get my jacket and my boots and I would go turn it off. A big no-no because we had mountain lions that would come into our front and backyard some nights. But that wasn't my worry, though, because I love cats. Just let me play with those cute little beans before you maul me to death.
No, the ghosts at this house seem scarier than that.
Yeah. Anywho, I get outside. I'm halfway to the barn, and I realized it was a dusty, extra dark, no stars night. Most importantly, the music had stopped, the lights were turned off, and the door was now completely shut. The only sound you could hear was the sound of the rakes scraping and the buckets being dragged. All of the alpacas were laying under their usual tree, sleeping or munching on hay while laying down. I don't remember going back inside or anything. I just remember waking up the next day to Anna leaving for school. Usually I woke up when she did and I would wait for the bus with her, but instead I just slept through for another couple hours. I was still so exhausted after that. I never told anyone about this because I didn't want to get in trouble for leaving the house that night. And do you remember that schoolhouse that I mentioned? Well, we never entered this building until the owner had come to stay with us. I believe it was shearing season, so she had us all go out there to get some supplies that were stored in the old schoolhouse, and us girls begged to go see it. My stepdad Fergus, my sister Anna, and I loaded our little mule, and we drove out there to go get the stuff and for us to see it. Since it was old and falling apart, we weren't allowed to go far in, but that was okay with me because Anna was digging through a box of old junk, and Fergus and I are back in the building, and we spot, and this is a trigger warning for the appearance of a suicide.
Oh, okay.
And we spot a woman hanging from the rafters.
Oh my gosh.
I looked at him and said, "Do you see that?" And all he said was, "We have what we need. Let's get out of here." He never mentioned it and would tell me that I was misremembering if I ever brought it up, or he would just ignore me. I, to this day, cannot explain it. It wasn't like any other spirit that I'd seen, and it definitely wasn't a real person, guessing by the dress and the bonnet that she wore. Although I do want to keep writing, this has taken me 4 hours to get all of this down, and I have no idea how, as I'm a quick writer usually, but my laptop is overheating to the point that I can hardly touch it, and I keep feeling a man's hand wrap around my neck, which used to happen on the farm and in my office/classroom. It's only happened to me since I started to share these stories. I'll try to get back with a part 2 sometime, because really, I've hardly begun. Keep it spooky, babes. See.
You've hardly begun. This is terrifying. Also, the fact that this entity is like continuing to try to silence them from sharing this story every time. And like, it sounds like they don't live on this farm anymore. So
yeah, because it was like a rental situation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, also, let's just talk about how C lost time. Like the one day C goes out to try to be in the dark and then realizes, like the moment C realizes that it's the quiet, dusty night. You're right. It does really feel like the movie Nope. And like looks around and realizes that all of what C was seeing before is now not happening around them. It's just like stillness and dark and dust. And then wakes up in bed the next morning, hours later. The dragging of the buckets, too, is so intimidating. Like hearing that and not knowing where it's coming from or being able to see anybody. But just, it almost reminds me of like, the classic, like metal chains being dragged across the floor or whatever as this like spooky sound in the background of your horror movie.
Ugh. It's so creepy. And I just, when I saw that subject line, I was thinking like how cute there'd be alpacas. Even though it says cursed, I just imagined cute, fuzzy little.
Well, I misled us a little bit by being like, oh, there's animals. It's animal themed for me.
I do want pictures of the schoolhouse. I'm like, clearly it has so much history and a lot of dark stuff attached to it. If it predates even the existence of the state,
Well, and it sounds like there's a ton of them all over.
Yeah. I'm going to read one from our listener, Erin, and it's called Ghost Funeral Home. Children Followed Me Home. Hey, ladies, my name is Erin. You can use my name. This is going to be full of spelling and grammar errors. Sorry. But I work at the most beautiful funeral home ever. It's one of the oldest funeral home mausoleums in my area, built in 1914, and it is beautiful. I've attached some photos to show you, and we'll put some in the YouTube video for you to see. I spend most of my days with you in my ear as I'm working, but I take you out when I'm doing funeral services, of course. So I wanted to send you my story because it's so weird and I truly cannot explain it, and I thought it was worth sending. I was only working at the funeral home for maybe a month or so at this point. So side note, at that time, I moved into the funeral home in an apartment over the funeral home because I couldn't find an apartment I could afford being a single mom with 3 kids. So I was talking to my coworker about spirits that may be in our work because my kids and I lived there. And he told me a couple of stories, but the one that I kept thinking about was about the children that would run down the back hall and laugh and brush against him. So the next day, I had a funeral service for a lady named Debbie, and she seemed like an amazing person with an incredible family and friends. They all said she was so loved and that she used to love to joke around and be silly. My kind of lady. So after her service, I was closing the doors in our chapel. These doors are heavy and probably 12 feet tall. I closed one side and walked to the other side of the chapel to close the other. And I looked back and I saw that the door that I had just closed was open again. So I said to myself, well, that's wild. And I went to close it again. And then the door that I had just closed on the other side opens again, back and forth. This is like 5 times. So I take a look at Debbie, who's in the casket, and I said, Debbie, I'm all about joking and playing around, but please stop. I have to go pick up my kids from school. I'm not kidding. When after I said that, it stopped. I told my coworker and he laughed and said, that probably wasn't Debbie. It was probably the ghost kids. So I had that in my mind and I went to go get my kids from school and drop them off at their father's house because it was his week with the kids. I went over to my best friend's house because she wanted me to watch her house for the weekend and watch her dogs and cats. Her cats are fat, lazy fucks, and I added the lazy fucks. It says lazy, but there's no fucks in there. But they don't move much unless it's for food. Well, you get that, don't you? Her dogs, on the other hand, are little crackheads and run around the house all the time. They're Bostons, and any video you see of them being crazy dogs, her dogs have done. So I, being my weirdo self, decided to watch scary movies, and then I went to bed. I lay down and I start thinking about the movie and things that I would have done differently if I was the person in the movie, because that's what my ADHD brain does and never turns off. And as I'm thinking, I hear running down the hall. I was like, oh my gosh, what are these crackhead dogs doing now? But then I see that they're both on my bed, and I look down the hall. Nothing's there. So I lay back down and I hear what, again, sounds like little feet running down the hall. I thought, man, I am watching too many scary movies, listening to too many scary podcasts, and working in a funeral home, and my mind is overreacting. But then I start hearing old music. And I'm like, did I forget to turn the TV off? So I'm like, I should get up and go turn it off, but I'm really sleepy and this bed is so soft and warm, so I'll just do it in the morning when I leave for work. So I put the pillow over my head and I realized the music is getting louder and louder. And then I start hearing knocking on the wall behind me. I thought, wait a second. Did the ghost children come home with me? After 30 minutes or so, it just stopped. I came back to her house the next night, and again, it all happens. So I called my best friend and told her what happened, and she said, girl, you really need to lay off those scary movies for a bit. So I went back home and I slept fine with no sounds. My best friend calls me the next day and tells me, hey, you need to come get your ghost children and take them home. I say, what?
Whoa,
she says,
what a turn.
Erin, they kept me up all night. I was hearing weird old-time music coming out of my fan by my bed, and it would get louder and louder. Then there was knocking and scratching on the wall behind my bed and the sounds of running up and down the halls. I was like, I'm sorry, but I don't want them back. You can keep them.
Scratching is a weird move for these kids.
I know. I feel like they're just doing everything to get attention.
Yeah.
I said, maybe they like all your animals and they love to play at your house. She was not very happy about that. And the next night she said she could hear the knocks on her daughter's door really hard over and over again. She thought maybe they got locked in. She opened the door to find her daughter was sound asleep and said maybe the kids got locked in there and couldn't handle her messy room anymore and wanted out. Her dad came to visit the next day and left. She didn't hear anything else after he left. So I said they probably went home with your dad because he lives on a ranch and he can't hear so well. So maybe they can get away with a lot more over there. I got my kids back from their dad and told them what happened. And they were like, Mom, you should have taken them back home. We would have loved to play with them. Although they probably would win at hide and seek. So we lived at the funeral home for about 4 months. And then I found a place to call home. And my kids cried when we left because they loved telling their friends that they lived at a funeral home and had 50,000 dead people as downstairs neighbors, and that their backyard was cooler than all of theirs because it was a cemetery. My kids are wild and creepy. Creepy kids.
They're proud, creepy kids too, which is so, I love that.
Thank you, ladies. I'll see you on the other side. Erin.
Dang. So it doesn't seem like they're attached at all to the funeral home. These kids are just looking for wherever the most entertaining place could be.
Yeah, because, well, were they originally at the funeral home or did someone bring them there and they've just kind of like bopped around? Are they now at Erin's friend's dad's house on the farm?
They remind me of Thing 1 and Thing 2.
Yes. Kind of like menaces.
Yeah. And you can't contain them. You can't control them. You just got to kind of relocate them for as long as you can tolerate.
It is kind of frustrating though. It's like, okay, it would be one thing for them to be running around all day and you hear them and be like, okay, let's like chill.
Mhm.
But it's the second that people are trying to fall asleep that they start to act up.
Yeah.
That it's like, come on, can't we just like coexist at the same time?
Right. Someone's got to introduce these kids to a traveling circus. I feel like maybe they'd do well in that environment.
Or get them on a sleep schedule.
Yeah. Or just like move them, across the earth where their circadian rhythm is now synced with when people are awake.
Oh, that's a good idea. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well, my takeaway from that is that Erin has the coolest kids.
Yes.
Living children.
To have a backyard that's a cemetery and live in a funeral home as a kid, I think is pretty freaking cool.
Oh.
If I could go back and redo my childhood, I would like to be Erin's kids.
I would be scared, honestly, living in a funeral home.
It does look beautiful though.
But also that's all you know too.
And it doesn't sound scary. I mean, the cursed alpaca farm is scarier than the funeral home.
True. Yeah, the alpaca farm is terrifying. And now I have a story called Horseback Riding Ghost.
Oh.
So we'll see how this one goes. Hi, Ghoulies, Ghost, and Leia. Greetings from a small little town in Maryland. I started listening to your podcast a little over a month ago, starting from the very beginning. And you two are amazing storytellers. I enjoy the banter between you, and your friendship in general is so sweet. And I want us to be best friends. I'm now up to episode 117, your first episode on farms. And I've been trying to decide if I should write in about my ghostly horse farm, and this episode finally convinced me to go for it. Now for the story. I volunteer on a small horse farm about 5 miles from my home. The farm, which currently only has 2 barns in use, sits on a plot of land that used to encase miles and miles of land around the small current property. In fact, my home used to sit on the farm property over at least 2 centuries ago. Anyway, the hauntings, for me, began a little over 4 years ago when I started my volunteer work. There are many ghosts on this property, but perhaps the most familiar to me is one of the first owners/managers of the farm, a cowboy that we've dubbed Mr. Manley. I tend to get to work extremely early in the morning, much earlier than any of the other volunteers. One Monday morning in December, there were no cars in the parking lot when I pulled in, and it was quite dark. I opened up the door, heading to the back aisle where the horse stalls were, and a few moments later, before I had turned on the lights, and it was pitch black, and before I could close the door, I heard some footsteps, definitely made by cowboy boots, coming up behind me. Now, I'd heard no car coming down that gravel driveway, but I thought maybe it was one of the owners walking up from the main house to check on things. So I finally got to the light switch, I flicked it on and said, "You're up here rather early," spinning around to greet whomever just walked behind me. But there was no one there, just my breath blowing out from the cold air. Another morning in the summer, and a very rainy one, I opened up the barn to see wet footprints leading back to the horses, as if someone had just walked in before me. I could see the boot prints through the rising sunlight, and again, no cars were in the lot, and none of the lights were on, and so there couldn't have been anyone in there. But there were those footprints heading into the barn, down the aisle, and then evaporating as if the boot prints were fading as the person walked in further. I hollered back into the back of the barn to see if anyone was there, but no answer. No noises except for those from the horses. Along with these phantom morning footsteps, which only I had witnessed, there have also been many times that I and the other barn hands have heard quiet footsteps throughout the morning, and loud grunts as if someone's clearing their throat during their shift.
Interesting.
There have been many times where me and the barn manager have, in several instances, caught a strong smell of what we thought was an old-timey earthy cologne as we walked across the indoor horse ring.
It just old-timey bad BO.
Yeah, what does that smell like? Wet dirt?
His stank.
And cigars?
Cowboy smells.
Yeah, musty. The ring is large, it's full-sized, and the smell of regular cologne would have dispersed quickly, but Mr. Manley's cologne hung around for quite some time, long enough that we could cross the ring, smell it, go to the other side of the ring, head back, and smell it again just as strongly. As if the old cowboy was just
standing there.
That's exactly what they say. As if the old cowboy was standing there in the middle of the ring, hands on hips, surveying things.
Ugh.
The most recent and most strange experience occurred when we opened up a new field for the horses to move into. They were pretty wild about the whole thing, getting used to the new space, the new fences, etc. And one evening, early in the transition, one of the horses, Star, had become completely out of control. And I was afraid to go into the field because of how worked up all the other horses were all getting. Suddenly, however, Star calmed, nuzzled into something, or maybe someone I simply could not see. She then turned to the side, stopped, and moved quietly as if someone had soothed her and climbed onto her for a ride. She trotted off into the field, allowing me to bring the rest of the horses in safely. As I was doing so, Star rode in large circles, as if she was riding around a ring. When it was time to bring her in, she sidled up quietly, paused as if the rider was dismounting, and easily walked with me to the barn. I have my own suspicions about the field and how it tends to spook the horses, but I only have theories. The field is right next to a dilapidated barn, more of a skeletal frame, and it spooks me. Maybe it's also affecting the horses? I don't know how Mr. Manley died, although we did find his gravestone on the property. I wouldn't say that he haunts the farm so much as I would say he keeps an eye on it, making sure that the horses are loved and well taken care of. There have also been other goings on at the farm, including phantom children and that collapsed barn, which must have some kind of terrible backstory. Even so, Mr. Manley watches over all of it. As it is spooky season all year long, have a spooktacular day from Holly.
Holly, I like Mr. Manley a lot.
Me
I
too.
feel like he loves his horses. This is one of those things, like we talk about a lot, how animals just like are so much more in tune. They can see things that we can't, and we'll never actually be able to like understand what their perception of the world is because we're on our own little bubbles. But these horses like so clearly are interacting with Mr. Manley often. Like he is so present to them.
Well, and Holly also is saying, he's there to keep an eye on the farm, to make sure everything's going well, to make sure the horses are cared for. But I would say I also think he's there to make sure that the volunteers and the staff are cared for, because in that situation where he took Star away from the rest of the horses and distracted Star so that Holly could safely get the rest of the horses out of that pasture, that wasn't something that was done necessarily for the horses as much as it was done for her safety.
Right. I do like that. Oh, I would love to talk to Mr. Manley. They should do like a little seance there. Use a spirit box.
I know. I'm curious what they would gather. I'm also curious, like, are there cameras in the barn? Like, can you see things move or things being done?
Oh, that's a good
idea. Do people talk
out
out loud to him? Like, is he such a regular that everyone's like, oh, hello, Mr. Manley. Good morning. Coming in for my shift. Or is it just kind of like this thing that people have in the back of their minds where when they see the cowboy boot prints or hear it, they're like, Mr. Manley's
So this is why I wish we could like go in the field and be at this farm where Holly works and just like interact with Mr. Manley while we tell the story.
I feel like I'd really rely on him. Like if I were riding a horse and the horse went wild, I'd scream for Mr. Manley probably first before I screamed for a human.
Because he could be there immediately. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. This is a story from our listener, Reed, and it is called Childhood Friend. Hi, ladies, Ghost and Leia. I've been absolutely loving the podcast, and I'm currently still catching up. I have a long way to go, but I've had a few encounters in my life, and I would like to tell you about mine and then my mother's. The first encounter I had was when I was 2 to 3 years old. We used to live in an old apartment building that doesn't exist anymore. I used to have a friend. Mind you, I was small and didn't know any better, but my friend's name was George. But I didn't know George was dead. We used to run up and down stairs, play ball, play hide and seek, and we got into a handful of trouble. He was harmless to me, but I think he was protective of me. You see, what I didn't know until about 5 years ago was that he used to appear in my mom's dreams. My mom told me that she would see him, and he would be standing in the doorway of the room watching us all sleep. She would tell him to go away, you don't belong here, go home. And another time in her dream, she woke up and she wasn't herself. Instead, she was a man. She would yell at the kid and hurt him. And she believes that she was experiencing what George experienced in his life before he was a ghost. That George was trying to share his death with her, which is sad. That means
the second part I totally understand, but the first part where she's trying to tell him to go away, it does make me curious if she wasn't dreaming at that point, but just actual projecting.
Right. Or her brain just interpreted it as a dream because it was so scary.
Yeah. Yeah.
She also knew about George because one night I got up and she made me a sandwich. She was going to bed and I put on some cartoons, but she heard me talking. And I said, no, I don't want to play right now. I'm trying to eat my sandwich. So in a way, I think he was my friend, but also trying to protect me. And when we were forced out of the building so it could be torn down, it was sadly the last time I ever saw George. Another encounter I had was when we bought my mom's new house. This was a few years later. We got there and we ran up the stairs for the first time. And she said that I stopped dead in my tracks. She asked what was wrong, and I responded, "There's a hand." But she couldn't see anything there. Then, aside from that, there was a toy that would go off a lot in the house, but there wasn't much other activity. But now my mom has a lot more active dreams. She has this one reoccurring dream where at one point she thought she was a witch, and she was starting to have dreams of a life where she was an Egyptian pharaoh. So maybe it's a past life? That's all the encounters I have. See you on the other side. Read.
I think your mom has a lot to explore in terms of her own abilities and spirituality.
Yes.
There's so much. I do feel both scared and sad for the invisible
George.
friend, imaginary friend George. Yes.
It kind of sounds like he existed at that apartment building, and perhaps when they moved and it was knocked down, like his spirit is still lingering there. I wonder what they rebuilt or if they built what they built on top of it.
And what other people who had lived there before have experienced or lived there after too. Like,
right.
Was he appearing because there were children in that apartment and he felt connected to that and wanting to tell his story?
Just hang
if
out
it were
with
just
George.
like a single person or a couple, like would they have the same sort of experiences?
Well, yeah. I mean, Reed's mom sounds very open. So like if they're, it sounds like she probably would have had those dreams regardless. But for people who aren't open and who perhaps didn't have kids, like would they even interact with George at all?
Right. Yeah.
I don't know. Wait, okay. I meant to tell you this. Okay. So last night I was just having like I truly like ordered an unhealthy amount of John and Vinny's and sat in my bed and watched old movies. And I had brought up Sleepover to you a couple encounters ago. And so I was like, oh, I want to rewatch that. And then I was like, okay, well, what do I watch next? And so I watched Aquamarine, which also has Sarah Paxton. And I posted it on my stories and someone responded saying I should watch The Innkeeper. And I had never seen it before. It's a Sarah Paxton movie, but it is about a haunted hotel. And Sarah Paxton.
I was going to say, this sounds scary.
It is. It's like a horror movie. And I think it's based on a real haunted hotel that is now closed in Connecticut. And I am going to do research on it to see if like it's similar. The movie is not great, but the concept is really fun. And it's basically this old hotel that's going out of business and it's rumored to be haunted. It's like the last weekend of business. And Sarah Paxton and the other actor are the only two people working there. And there's like 2 guests in the hotel. And Sarah Paxton and her coworker are trying to like communicate with the ghost of the hotel and solve the mystery of what happened to her. And so like the concept I really like, and the EVPs and all that stuff is really interesting. The scares are very like, you know when they're going to happen. It's very predictable. And so it wasn't scary, but...
Well, is it like a Disney movie or something like that?
It's on Peacock. You can watch it on Peacock.
Is Sarah Paxton, is she the one that played Marnie in the very last Halloween Town?
I think so.
Okay, because recently I saw an interview from the woman who played Marnie and I think from Sarah Paxton, because we had always heard the rumor that Sarah Paxton was cast as Marnie in the last Halloween Town movie because the original actor or actress had a conflict. And that's not true. Disney just literally didn't offer the original actor
Interesting.
the role. At the time, Sarah Paxton was like in a bunch of movies and she was kind of like their next rising star. And so they literally put her in for a popularity thing and it totally backfired, unfortunately, on that movie and on Sarah Paxton because people were blaming her for like being the Marnie that we all
That is weird.
Sorry. But yeah.
Okay, yeah. It says, for reasons unclear, Sarah Paxton replaced Kimberly J. Brown as Marnie in this film, despite Brown being fully available for the shoot. Returned to Halloween Town in 2006. It is interesting because, I mean, I watched 3 movies with Sarah Paxton. They're all probably around the same time. And I was like, wow, Sarah Paxton was so freaking busy. She was like in everything.
I think Kimberly, she's like a nurse or something.
Okay.
I don't know. She's not an actor anymore.
Okay, let's just look at Sarah Paxton real quick. Okay. 2004 was Sleepover. 2006 was Aquamarine and Return to Halloween Town. Then she was in Sydney White in 2007. She was also making music videos. Oh, The Innkeepers was in 2011, which years later she has like super short hair, but also like kind of weird. Her coworker in the movie like starts to be like, "You're beautiful," and he's like older, and it's kind of creepy. I was like,
that is
we
creepy.
didn't need this part of the movie, did we?
Yeah, that seems like the scariest part of the plot, to be honest.
Yeah.
See, sometimes real life horrors and relationships with humans can be scarier than the paranormal.
But sometimes the paranormal is still very scary. So, as promised, please enjoy this clip from one of the live streams I recently did. And make sure to look out for future live streams on our YouTube. I'll post them on our social media as well. And let me know what you think. Bye-bye.
Why are you here?
I'm here to say hello and appreciate the beautiful cemetery which you are at rest at.
Sing.
I don't know if you want me to sing. Hello. Nice to see you again.
Leave me alone, soldier.
Do the spirits want us to leave?
Play with me. Leave me alone.
I feel so witchy. We are at the Old Burial Hill Cemetery in Marblehead. I walked over here. One of the oldest graveyards in New England, site of first meeting house. 600 Revolutionary heroes and several early pastors were interred at the top of the hill. And also thank you to everyone for, I realized giving my location so far in advance of where I'm going to be live could be, if given to the wrong group of people, were I a different type of person, is probably a bad idea. But thank you to all of you for not coming to murder me. Really, really love you all for that. I am gonna first set some intentions, and then I did bring Daniel in my, why am I blanking on what it's called? Pendulum. And I don't know if I'm gonna bring Daniel out because he's a trickster spirit. The same way I wouldn't want to do a Ouija board in a cemetery or really a Ouija board generally. I want to be as respectful to the spirits here as possible if there are any here, and more than anything, just say hi. Okay, so I am going to flip the camera around and show you the cemetery, and we'll walk around a little bit. And here is the cemetery. And also look how beautiful this view is. I mean, but it's beautiful here. It's peaceful. I'm really feeling like Mary Shelley right now. So if you have seen Hocus Pocus, I'm pretty sure, and I might be making up this spot exactly, but I'm pretty sure these rocks over here in the very beginning of Hocus Pocus 1, when Max is being bullied on his way home and the bullies steal his sneakers, I'm pretty sure it's right here. So just setting some intentions. We really just want to enjoy this beautiful cemetery and this evening here. If there are any spirits here, we would love to communicate with you, but we are only bringing forth positive and good intentions and energy. We ask that you do not follow any of us home unless those listening and others on their own have decided otherwise. Myself personally, I do not want to bring you home. I will come back and visit daily if you would like me to, because it's an easy walk and it's beautiful here. Okay. I'm gonna open a ghost tube.
Please stop.
And it immediately just said, please stop. Okay, great. Good start. The way it worked last time when I was doing the unboxing at my house for the last live stream, when I was opening up the antiques and goods that I got from Salem, it was wild how accurate everything was, and it was communicating with Daniel, and I don't know, it was just wild. But these tombstones are very, very old and historic. You want to? What do you want to do? Ghost Tube just said, I want to. What would you like to do?
Serpent.
Serpent? I'm gonna bring Daniel out, and I'll be very clear with him what we want with him, and if he starts to misbehave, we can be very stern with him. He and I have a good relationship.
Kathleen.
Is there Kathleen listening? K-A-T,
Tyler.
and the name Tyler. This is interesting that a lot of names are coming through. When I did this at my house, not a single name came through, and it was like all very specific about my office and my house. But the fact that names are coming through and we're in a cemetery. So, those of you who don't know, Daniel was gifted to me. It's a pendulum that was a gift. And a listener sent like a whole note about how to use Daniel and everything. So basically, we're going to set our intentions again, specifically with Daniel. So, hi, Daniel. I'm really excited to communicate with you, and I hope you would like to communicate with us as well. I want to be very clear. I only want to communicate with Daniel while using this pendulum. And Daniel, I know you like to be playful, but tonight, let's please be respectful of the spirits here in this cemetery and just of the spirits generally, and help us communicate if there are any spirits that would like to. All right, Daniel, are you here with us? Will you show us yes? Also, keep in mind it's windy, so I want to be, I don't know. Okay, I'm gonna ask again. Well, Daniel, are you with us? All right, well, it's moving. Also, I'll lower my hand. I'm not moving.
Sure.
Oh, ghost tube just,
Elderly.
sure. And then elderly. Can you guys hear what ghost tube is saying? Let me turn it up. Sorry, one second, Daniel, I'm gonna put you down. Okay, Daniel. Hello. Nice to see you again.
Leave me alone, soldier.
Daniel, are you telling me to leave you alone? Okay, I think this is the wind, you guys. I don't know. Daniel, is there a spirit here who wants us to leave them alone? Okay, well, to the spirit who does not want to communicate with us, okay, that's fine. Are there any spirits here who do want to communicate with us? No. Do the spirits want us to leave?
Play with me.
You guys, this is like, doing this by myself is a whole different thing. Okay. We had a spirit to say, play with me.
Empty.
Empty.
How are you?
How are you? Hi. I'm good. How are you? Thanks for coming.
Where am I?
Where are you? You are in Marblehead, Massachusetts, and you're in the Old Burial Hill Cemetery, which is a beautiful, peaceful place, and it's a great place to rest. Okay. All right, Daniel, are there any spirits here who would like to communicate with us? Whoa, you can literally feel the energy in your palm. I feel so witchy. Are there any spirits here that do not want us here? That's a yes.
Stephen.
Does Stephen not want us there? Or here? The wind is blowing a lot right now. Hold on. Right now.
Angry.
I'm sorry you're angry.
45.
Are there 45 spirits here? This is so sad because
No.
oh, there are not 45 spirits here. Okay, this is what was really hard, is because I feel like,
Over here.
am I looking in the right direction?
Do you know?
What do I know? It's hard because there's so many spirits here. How do you know who you're communicating with, and how do you know who's coming through and when? Okay, Daniel, will you help us? Let's focus on this spirit who's angry and that we can help. Is this spirit's name Stephen?
Medicine.
Did you need medicine? Yes.
What happened to me?
You guys, this is really sad. Well, to the spirits here, I don't know what happened to all of you. And I don't know many of your names. I don't know many of your histories. But You lived a life in Marblehead, presumably, and you died in Marblehead. And I hope that you are on the other side.
Simon.
Hi, Simon. I hope you are on the other side with loved ones, or maybe perhaps other spirits here at the cemetery. And I hope you enjoy the view of Marblehead and all of the people who come here to visit you. Daniel, are there other things that the spirits here want to communicate with us? Yes.
Dining.
Dining? Would you like to go to dinner with me? It'd be my pleasure. Should we have dinner here one night? A little picnic? Is there a specific question I should ask? No? So I can ask.
Revolting.
What's revolting? Me? That's fine.
Bring it to me.
What do you want me to bring to you? Would you like Daniel? What do they want me to bring them?
Up here.
Up here. All right, I'm gonna try to move around and see where it wants me to go. Where's up here? Let me go over here. This way?
It's warm.
It's warm. I'm gonna, real quick, I'm gonna put Daniel away just so that we can kind of move about, and I'll bring the phone.
Come inside.
Come inside? Inside your tomb? I'm gonna say goodbye to Daniel so that we can start moving through the cemetery with the ghost tube and my phone to see what happens, and we'll go from there. Daniel, thank you so much for communicating with us. I'll see you at home. I love you. Goodbye.
Dennis.
Dennis. There's a dentist here.
Gin.
Gin. Dennis, did you like gin? Was that your drink of choice? Okay. So.
Come back.
Come back. I'm right here. I'm not leaving yet. I promise. I'm not going to leave. We're going to go walk so that we can see if there are any other spirits to communicate with. Sorry for the boob shot.
Okay, hi. I really need to jump in real quick because what is about to happen is absolutely mind-blowing, mind-boggling. I couldn't combine those words, apparently. Keep watching. The spirits are so communicative in this moment, and the footage goes out. And the next night, I went to drinks with someone who I'd never met before. It was basically like a friend date. And she goes, "Oh, I was walking through the cemetery the other day. Did you see this one tombstone?" She literally pulls up a picture of the exact same tombstone that all of this is about to happen to, of the thousands of headstones and graves at this cemetery. Okay, back to it.
Angry.
I'm sorry you're angry. I promise I don't want to do anything to make you more angry. We're here.
To your right.
To my right. Okay, moving to the right. I'm going to the right.
I want to stay.
Who wants to stay? You want to stay with me, or you want to stay at the cemetery?
Leave me alone.
Okay. You guys, is it frozen for you? Because it's frozen for me. You? It was right when I went over here. Let's see what this stone says. Oh.
Come back.
This is like an interesting. I haven't seen that. Look at the detail on that.
Thirst.
Thirst. Born at this stone, the mortal part of Mrs. Susanna Jane, the amiable wife of Mr. Peter Jane, who lived, beloved, and died
Busy. Leave.
Okay.
Pendant. Where is it?
There's so many communications. There's a pendant. Where is it? Oh, they want Daniel back. Oh, that's wild. This is the most...
Not likely.
What's not likely? This is the most Mary Shelley thing I've ever done.
Sing.
You want us to sing? I don't know if you want me to sing.
Why are you here?
I'm here to say hello and appreciate the beautiful cemetery which you are at rest at. And also just let you know that I'm here and curious, and if you have any messages, I'm open to...
She won't leave.
She won't leave? Like me? I won't leave? Do you want me to leave? I think that's a sign, you guys. I might need to leave. I also have to go to Campfire Stories. So if you also... You can join Campfire Stories, and we can talk a little bit more about this. They're so responsive. It is wild. And if you go back and watch the live stream from last week that I did in my house, it is night and day. It is so much more communicative here because there's so many more spirits, whereas at my house, it was truly like mostly Daniel, and then there were like a couple of other responses, but it was wild. Okay, Daniel, I'm really, really grateful for you being here. I'm going to say goodbye. Again, I can't wait to see you at home, but we're shutting down communication, so that will be the end of that. Thank you. Daniel, please tell all other spirits that I am not welcoming them to come home with me, but I will come back to visit again. This is a beautiful photo. I'm going to keep walking home so that I'm not late for Campfire Stories. If you have any ghost stories about the outdoors, come share them. And if you don't want to share ghost stories, but you just want to hear other people share their ghost stories, you can... Need? What do you need?
Please go.
I'm leaving. Goodbye. Goodbye, spirits. Thank you so much for allowing us to be here. And for those of you who do not want me to leave and do want me to come back, I promise I will. One of the oldest graveyards in New England, site of first meeting house, 600 Revolutionary heroes and several early pastors were interred at the top of the hill.
While we sometimes are terrified of the paranormal, we do just enjoy kind of getting lost in these stories, whether they're spooky or sweet, because there's plenty of those too. So if you have any encounters with the paranormal, please email us at twogirlsoneghost@gmail.com.
And if you would like episodes 1 week early and ad-free, plus bonus episodes every single month, plus Campfire Stories every Tuesday, and quarterly book club, and so much more, join us on Patreon. It's $5 a month, and you get all of that and more. You get a sticker, a holiday card. It is so much fun, and it's a really great community of people over there. So you can join that. You can also rate and review us on iTunes. You can buy merch. You can support us by following us on social media. And most importantly, you can support us by getting sucked into the triangle and telling everyone you know about our podcast, and then having them tell everyone they know about the podcast, and then it goes down, down, and down, down. And then all of a sudden we've taken over the world.
And it's truly spooky season. So this is the time that if you have a friend that's like teetering on, ooh, I want to get into it, but I don't know if this is a year-round thing for me. Whatever, suck them in now. And then I'm sure they'll keep listening year-round, and you'll have another spooky year friend.
How fun.
How fun. Thank you to Jamie Ryan, who edits our audio and video, produces our podcast. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you to all of you.
We love you.
And we will see you on the other side.